Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Vania Rosi Salsabila. In this video, I want to explain about education in Indonesia, also the problems and the solutions of education in Indonesia. Here we go. Education is one of the key vehicles for the intellectual and professional development of our people and plays an increasingly important role in supporting a stronger and more globally competitive Indonesia. However, education in Indonesia still has several problems related to quality and access as well as the even distribution of well-trained teachers. Limited access to education in rural areas has contributed to increased urbanization as families relocate to cities in order to acquire better education. Education in Indonesia has not fully provided hope for the people through the values and benefits of education. This condition is evident from the low quality of graduates, lack of relevance of education in terms of the substance of the needs of society, and education actually used as the politicization of the district officials. Indonesia's ability to compete in global markets, the use of technology that can increase revenue and productivity, as well as the power to visit Indonesia to investors, was formed through the existence of resources human. Indonesia must catch up in the standard of education with other countries. For that, we need a re-identification of the problems of education in Indonesia and the solution to these problems. In Indonesia, efforts to the development of formal education was also carried out at various levels, from primary, secondary, to tertiary education. All these levels expected fulfilling functions and achieving national education goals, as contained in the Indonesian Law on National Education System number 20 of 2003, which serves to develop the ability and character development and civilization of the nation's dignity in the context of the intellectual life of the nation, and aims to develop students' potentials to become a man of faith and fear of God Almighty, noble, healthy, knowledgeable, skilled, creative, independent, and become citizens of a democratic and accountable. So the next is Indonesia education problems. Many teachers are still afraid to be creative and innovative in teaching activities. Orientation curriculum is still seen from the completion of the subject matter. Teachers will be fearful when realizing that what is taught is not finished. Teachers have always pursued the curriculum targets, whereas the implementation of the learning experience a variety of different situations in each semester and annually, so that the learning process in the classroom is still largely limited to the completion of teaching materials without regards to students' understanding of the content of the material being taught. In fact, not all students can understand the content of the lessons, and students who do not understand will be seen when answering a given test. In addition, the substance of the curriculum in terms of the density of the material is not significant to the allocation of available time. It is also one of the reasons that the material taught in class less meaningful and less noticeable relevance for students. The next problems in Indonesia education is the cost. For most people, the cost of education is still considered expensive. We see a clear example of the 9-year compulsory education program, which is actually still a core for us. Due to the fact that many children of school age are not in school or drop out of school on the grounds of cost. Though there are grants from the center, but they are nonetheless illegal levies or schools under the guise of an agreement between the school and parents. But immediately we cannot blame the school. Practice outside funding is not complete until the center at the school, whether at the level where the funds are trimmed by rogue elements. In addition, the practice of buying and selling the chair, it's sad to hear that, only to find that children attend school or were desired by parents. Parents are willing to spend money to be given to people who promise the chance to go to school that is desired. And make no mistake, these people don't have to come from the school. Many officials use his power to force the school to the student received. Is not this a form of corruption? If school students were accustomed to fraudulent practices such as this, don't blame a lot of corruptors in Indonesia. The next problem is the purpose of education. The purpose of education is to the intellectual life of the nation. Short education is creating students who have a high power of reason, the ability analysis of what is happening so that when experiencing a problem, will be able to take the right decision. But the phenomenon, education, it can also be misleading. We can see the quality of our education is only measured by the diploma. Yet today many certificates are traded, and we cannot deny that many officials bought it. If we think means that as long as the money we don't have to go to school, stay diploma we buy it. What is the condition of this nation if everyone thought that way? The next is national exam. Controversy regarding the implementation of the national examination has been discussed since the school year 2002 until 2003, from Hidayat Rais 2013. In that year, many people feel the deviations from the implementation of the national examination. The first that were assessed in the examination, only cognitive learners. But in education, the ability of learners includes three aspects, namely cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Deviation second is that the determination of the standard of education is done unilaterally by the government. This is certainly depriving teachers in assessment. Third, the examination ignores elements of the assessment process. And fourth, irregularities, namely final examination, provides psychological and social burden to students. Students were forced to memorize lessons in the national examination, whereas the purpose of learning is to build understanding instead of memorizing the lesson. Although in the last 2 years of unprocedural lessons above is minimized, but still educators and students cannot breathe. Indeed, assessment by teachers during the educational process is in progress is taken into account. But the proportion is still small, only 0.4. While national examination standards determined by the central government still has a proportion of 0.6, it's also a psychological burden for students. The last problem is education facilities. Currently, more we hear and see on the television news about the schools that are not feasible, where the students have to learn outside the classroom. Sad to see this. Even to school in the capital also experience something like this. Is not this country have of course the education budget can cope with such issues? Parliaments of every month doing a tour abroad under the guise of a comparative study, why only repair damaged schools requires a long time. Aggrieved course students as the next generation of this nation. How they are not alarmed if they have learned in the tumble-down buildings. After we see the problems of Indonesia education, so here is the solutions to problem of Indonesia education. Settlement of the problems of education should be comprehensive and integrated. For example, the government not only increased the education budget, but the resources and the quality of education remains low. Then, what to expect will not be achieved. If we look through the curriculum issues, things we need to fix is the implementation and demands given to implementing this curriculum. For example, teachers in schools are given the flexibility to run the curriculum, provided they are in the corridor, so teachers are required to complete the teaching materials. Learning will be more meaningful if students really understand the teaching materials provided by the teacher. Although with a bit of instructional materials rather than be given a lot of instructional materials, but is known only the surface of teaching materials. For the cause, if all education officials to run the program correctly, then the education budget in this country will not be reduced. Their bad deeds of education officials, then all things are reduced. Inequitable distribution of education funding reception becomes unbalanced. Quality education is not cheap, or rather can say does not have to cost or free. The government should ensure that every citizen get a good education and government to provide assurance that the lower levels of society have access to quality education. Ideally, education in Indonesia should be materialized by the minimum school-age children of high school, regardless of the child comes from a family of rich or poor. Concerning the question of education based solely on diplomas and graduation national exam, diploma is important to demonstrate the legality of our ability, but should that need this diploma emphasizes the process of acquiring the diploma. There is no difference with the national exam. The actual implementation of the national examination is still relevant, but in the process there should be noted and corrected. For example, the passing standards are better adapted to the conditions and environment of each student. When it comes to infrastructure, will certainly die again the commitment of the government and education officials concerned, and not a part already discussed above, that everything must be returned to the private officials who have the authority, if they intend to be really useful for their country or simply looking to profit from the education conditions of this nation. If all the officers have a sense of honesty and a desire to develop the nation, is not easily affected by the environment and can be firmly against the things that can harm our education system. Quality education undoubtedly will be owned by the nation, starting from the central authorities, and two teachers who are in direct contact with students should have the same commitment in advancing education in this country. So guys, that's all. Thanks for watching. See you on my next video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.